Hi, my name is Christina Bakker, Extension Meat Science Specialist at South Dakota State University. In this video, we are going to discuss the impact that carcass composition has on retail yield of pork carcasses. What I have here are two sides of a pork carcass. This side is a barrow or a castrated male, and this side is from a gilt, which is a female. The hot carcass weight for these two carcasses was approximately 200 pounds. So when they were harvested, their final weight was basically the same. Some differences that we have between the two carcasses, as you can see on this barrow carcass, it is quite a bit fatter. If we look at the fat along the entire back, when we measure it, it is about 1.3 inches of back fat. When we look at the carcass for this gilt over here, the back fat measurement that we have is closer to 0.8 inches of back fat. So approximately 1/2 of an inch difference in back fat thickness. Other things that we'll evaluate when we are looking at the carcass is what appears to be the amount of muscling. Looking at the two, they don't seem like they have very much difference in muscle dimension, but one of the things that is difficult to tell with pork carcasses is that fat tends to cover up a lot of the carcass and can be misleading as muscle. So overall, looking at these two carcasses, I would say that this one is fatter, but overall it looks like the muscling may be pretty comparable. What we're going to do next is we're going to actually cut each of these sides down into their respective retail cuts, and we'll talk about yield. Now we've taken those two sides and we've cut them down into their retail portions. On this side, we have that trimmer gilt carcass, and on this side, we had that fatter barrow carcass. And I brought some of the smaller pieces that really showed a difference between the two sides to show you on this table. First, starting with the loin. The loin of that gilt carcass that had less fat actually has a 5-pound advantage over the loin from the barrow carcass. The loin-eye area itself was about 1 inch larger than it was on that barrow carcass as well. So overall, we have quite a bit more pounds to sell in that pork chop sector. Additionally, when I was trimming the fat off of that loin, we had not that much fat that needed to come off as I was removing the skin. However, when you look at the fat that was still left on the belly of the skin from that loin of the fatter carcass, you can see that we had quite a bit more fat that was left and taken off. Now, all of this fat and this skin is just going to go into rendering for us. It is not going to be used for any retail cuts. One interesting difference that we had, though, was with this barrow carcass, the belly weighed approximately 3 pounds more than it did with that gilt carcass. And that is slightly more desirable as we have thicker bacon with it that's a little bit firmer. As you can see with this belly from this trimmer carcass, it's a little bit of a softer belly, and that bacon will be softer as well.
Now let's compare the weight difference between these two carcasses looking at individual primals and retail cuts. As I mentioned earlier, the skin, fat, and offal was about 7 pounds less for the gilt carcass than it was for the barrow. Additionally, there was a 5-pound increase in the weight of the loin and just under a 2-pound increase for the 2-piece ham. Additionally, the gilt carcass produced about 3.5 more pounds of trim compared to the barrow. But as I mentioned earlier, the barrow carcass did have a heavier weight belly. Now let's look at the economics of these two carcasses. I conducted some standard industry calculations that are defined at the bottom of this table. Overall, the gilt carcass had approximately 123 pounds of lean compared to the barrow carcass at 109. That means that the gilt carcass had an additional 7% of its carcass weight of lean product compared to the barrow. As you can see, the cost of the carcasses was pretty similar between the two, but as the gilt carcass had increased of pounds of lean and increased percent of lean, the overall cost per pound of lean was 17 cents per pound less than the barrow carcass.
I hope this video has been informative for you, and allows you to think through a little bit more when you're considering buying a side of pork. It's important to not only know the hot carcass weight of those carcasses when you're purchasing them, but it's also important to know the confirmation that you're going to be getting. As we can see, especially with these loins, it makes a huge difference with how much yield you're actually going to be getting.